Please help me." Cowboy lifted the girl cast out by her stepmother. The sun was just beginning to rise, casting a soft golden glow across the small village that lay at the edge of the dusty road. In one of the modest houses, a young girl named Clara stirred awake. Her room was small, with a single window that overlooked the fields beyond, and the faint smell of stale bread mixed with the scent of morning dew. She rubbed her eyes and sighed, knowing that another long day awaited her. Clara's father had passed away 2 years ago, leaving her in the care of her stepmother, a woman named Margaret, who never missed a chance to make Clara feel small and worthless. From the moment Clara entered the kitchen, she could feel the tension in the air. Margaret was already busy, barking orders at her own daughters, who were much younger and spoiled in every way. "Clara, don't forget the firewood," Margaret snapped. "And make sure the milk doesn't spill this time." Clara swallowed hard and nodded, careful not to meet Margaret's cold, sharp eyes. She knew any misstep could lead to punishment, even for something minor. Clara moved quietly, gathering sticks and kindling from the small pile near the door. Her hands were raw from constant work, but she did not complain. She had learned early that complaining only earned harsh words or worse. As she worked, she thought about the days when her father was alive. He had always treated her with love and kindness, guiding her gently and telling her she was capable of anything. Those memories were a bittersweet comfort now, a reminder of everything she had lost. After stacking the firewood neatly, Clara went to fetch water from the well. The bucket was heavy, and she struggled under its weight, but she persevered, thinking of the warm meals she had to help prepare for the family. Margaret was already in the kitchen, fussing over breakfast for her daughters. The younger girls giggled and whispered secrets to each other, while Clara moved silently, careful not to draw attention. She filled the kettle and placed it over the fire, glancing toward the window at the fields where the early morning mist lingered. A part of her wished she could run out there, free from the walls that felt more like a cage than a home. Breakfast was tense, with Margaret criticizing everything Clara did. "Too much salt in the porridge? Why can't you do anything right?" she scolded sharply. Clara lowered her head and kept stirring her own thoughts, trying to make herself invisible. It had been this way for years. Every day was a battle, not for survival, but just to keep herself from being humiliated or punished. After breakfast, Clara went to the garden to tend to the small patch of vegetables. Her hands moved deftly among the plants, pulling weeds and checking for pests. She loved the quiet work. It was one of the few moments she could breathe and feel some control over her life. She hummed softly to herself, a melody her father used to sing, letting it carry her thoughts away from the harsh words of her stepmother. The sun climbed higher, warming the earth and the sweat on her brow, but she did not mind. The garden was her refuge, a place where she could still feel alive despite everything else. As the day went on, Clara completed her chores with mechanical precision. She washed the dishes, swept the floors, and mended clothes that were worn and torn. Margaret watched from the doorway, her eyes sharp and critical. "Why are you so slow? Do you want me to send you away?" she hissed suddenly. Clara flinched, gripping the broom tighter. She did not answer, knowing that speaking could only make things worse. By late afternoon, Clara had begun to feel the weight of exhaustion pressing down on her. She had been working since sunrise with barely a break, and her stomach growled quietly from the small breakfast she had eaten. Margaret, of course, was oblivious. She was busy fussing over her own daughters, making sure they had everything they could possibly need. Clara wiped the sweat from her brow and stepped outside, hoping to steal a moment of peace in the fading sunlight. But peace was fleeting. Margaret's voice called out sharply, "Clara, come here at once." Clara's heart sank. She walked back toward the house, her steps slow and hesitant. Margaret's eyes were cold as she glared at her. "I don't know why I even keep you around. You're useless. Always slow, always clumsy. You've ruined everything today. Take your bag." "I don't want to see you again in this house." Clara froze, unable to believe what she was hearing. Her stepmother's words hit her like a physical blow, leaving her chest tight and her hands trembling. "You can't do this," she whispered, her voice barely audible. But Margaret was relentless. "I said get out. You're not my daughter. You never were. You have nothing here." With a sinking heart, Clara grabbed the small bag she had packed in secret, filled with a few belongings she could carry. Tears blurred her vision as she stepped outside, the sun now dipping toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the fields. She looked back at the house, the place she had called home, and felt an unbearable emptiness. Everything she had known, everything she had worked for had been taken from her in an instant. The fields stretched out before her, endless and intimidating. Clara walked slowly, unsure where to go or what to do. Her small bag weighed heavily on her shoulder, but it was nothing compared to the weight in her heart. She passed by the edge of the forest, hoping to find shelter among the trees, but the shadows seemed menacing, and the rustle of leaves made her jump. The world suddenly felt enormous and dangerous, and she was painfully alone. As night fell, Clara's steps became slower and more unsteady. Hunger gnawed at her stomach, and the chill of the evening air cut through her thin dress. She found a small clearing near a fence that bordered a ranch and collapsed onto the ground, exhausted and afraid. Her body shook from the cold, her eyes filled with tears she could no longer hold back. "Please, someone, help me," she whispered into the darkness, her voice trembling with desperation. She curled into herself, trying to find warmth in the grass, listening to the distant sounds of animals settling in for the night. Every shadow seemed to carry a threat, every sound a warning. She had nowhere to turn, no one to rely on, and the loneliness was almost unbearable. But in the midst of her fear, a small spark of hope remained. She had survived this long, and perhaps someone kind would come along, someone who would see her not as a burden, but as a human being deserving of care. Minutes felt like hours as Clara lay there, shivering and unsure if she would be able to continue. Her eyes wandered to the faint lights flickering from the ranch across the fence. Maybe there was someone there, maybe someone could help. She whispered again, her voice barely audible, "Please, help me." It was then that the faint sound of footsteps reached her ears. Clara held her breath, unsure if it was a threat or a blessing. The steps came closer, deliberate and steady, and a figure appeared at the edge of the clearing. A man, tall and strong, dressed in worn jeans and a wide-brimmed hat, looked at her with surprise and concern. His eyes softened as he took in her appearance, dirty, trembling, and utterly alone. "Hey there," he said gently, lowering his voice so as not to startle her. "Are you all right?" "What's your name?" Clara's lips quivered, but she managed to whisper, "Clara, my stepmother, she sent me away." The man nodded slowly, kneeling a few feet away from her to appear less threatening. "It's okay, Clara, you're safe now." "Come with me, I'll help you." He offered a hand, not commanding, just gently showing that she had a choice. Clara hesitated, fear still gripping her heart, but she could see the kindness in his eyes. Slowly, she reached out, and he helped her to her feet. As they walked toward the ranch, Clara felt a mixture of relief and uncertainty. She didn't know this man, didn't know what awaited her, but for the first time in a long while, someone treated her with dignity and compassion. She clutched her small bag tightly, but her steps were steadier, guided by the quiet strength of the man beside her. The ranch came into full view now, a modest but well-kept place with lights glowing warmly in the windows. Clara could smell the faint scent of hay and horses, a welcoming aroma that was so different from the cold, harsh air of her former home. The man opened the gate and gestured for her to enter. "You'll be safe here tonight," he said. "We'll figure things out from here." Clara nodded, tears streaming down her face, a mix of fear, relief, and gratitude. She had been cast out, abandoned, and left to face the world alone, but in this moment she felt the first flicker of hope. Perhaps life could be different. Perhaps someone truly could care for her. She whispered once more, her voice barely audible, "Thank you for helping me." The man smiled gently, tipping his hat. "You don't need to thank me. You deserve a chance to be safe and happy. Let's get you some food and a warm bed." As they stepped inside the ranch house, Clara looked back briefly at the dark fields behind her, the place where she had felt hopeless and alone just hours before. And for the first time in what felt like forever, she allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, her story was not over. The ranch was quiet as the night settled in, the gentle hum of crickets filling the air outside. Clara followed the man, whose name she had just learned was Jake, into a warm kitchen. The soft glow of lanterns reflected off wooden walls, casting long, comforting shadows. The smell of fresh bread and stew made her stomach growl. She had not eaten a proper meal in a long time, and the simple comfort of food made her eyes water. Jake noticed her hesitation and gave a gentle smile. "Don't worry," he said, pulling out a chair for her. "Sit down, eat. You've had a long day." Clara nodded silently, still wary but feeling the first spark of safety she had felt in months. She placed her small bag at her feet, its weight reminding her of the harsh world she had just escaped. As she ate, Jake talked softly, asking her small questions about herself, her favorite things, her past, and what she liked to do. Clara answered slowly, unsure at first, but his calm and kind tone made it easier to speak. After dinner, Jake showed Clara the guest room where she could sleep. It was modest but clean, with soft blankets and a warm bed. Clara's eyes widened in surprise. I can stay here," she whispered. Jake nodded. "Of course, you're safe here, Clara. No one will hurt you." "Not tonight, not ever here." For the first time, Clara felt a flicker of hope in her heart. She nodded and climbed into bed, hugging herself as relief washed over her. The next morning, the sun rose over the ranch, painting the fields gold and green. Birds sang in the trees, and the smell of fresh hay and earth filled the air. Clara woke to the sound of horses neighing and cows lowing in the distance. She felt a strange mixture of excitement and nervousness. Everything was so different from the harsh, suffocating house of her stepmother. She put on her simple dress and followed Jake to the stables. Jake showed her around the ranch, explaining each animal and task patiently. Clara listened intently, absorbing every word. She helped brush the horses, feed the chickens, and gather eggs. Her hands were sore from the work, but it felt different, rewarding, and purposeful. She could feel her confidence growing with each small success. "You're doing really well," Jake said kindly when she managed to calm a skittish horse. Clara smiled faintly, a sense of pride stirring in her chest. Days passed, and Clara's confidence began to grow. She learned to ride horses, mend fences, and help with the fields. She discovered a natural talent for caring for the animals, their gentle nuzzles and soft eyes giving her comfort she had never known before. Jake watched her quietly, impressed with her resilience and determination. He never pressured her but always offered guidance and encouragement. Clara began to realize that she was capable of more than she had ever imagined. Despite the busy work, there were quiet moments when Clara felt the weight of her past. She would sit alone by the pond at the edge of the ranch, staring at the water as memories of her father and her cruel stepmother came flooding back. Sometimes she cried silently, the tears mingling with the cool water on her hands. Jake never interrupted her during these moments. He understood that healing took time, and that trust and patience were more powerful than words. One afternoon, while Clara was helping to mend a fence, a cart rolled down the road toward the ranch. Clara's heart skipped a beat when she saw a familiar face, her stepmother, Margaret, accompanied by her younger daughters. The air became tense instantly. Clara froze, unsure of what to do, her hands gripping the fence post tightly. Margaret's eyes were sharp and calculating, scanning the ranch as if claiming it for herself. Jake noticed her stiffening posture and moved closer, placing a protective hand near her shoulder. "It's all right," he said calmly, his voice steady. "Stay here. I'll handle this." Clara watched as Jake approached the stepmother, his presence firm but not aggressive. Margaret's eyes narrowed when she saw him. "Where is she?" she demanded, her voice sharp. "Where is that girl? She belongs to me." Jake took a deep breath, keeping his tone even. "Clara is safe here," he said. "She is not coming back with you. She has a right to choose where she lives." Margaret's face twisted in anger. "You have no right to interfere. She is my stepdaughter. You can't keep her from me." Clara felt fear rising again, but she also felt something new: strength. She stepped forward, her voice trembling but firm. "I am not going back," she said. "I have a choice. I am not your property. I have a life here, and I am not going to let you hurt me anymore." Margaret stared at her, disbelief and rage mixing in her eyes. For the first time, Clara felt a sense of empowerment. She realized that the words of her stepmother no longer held power over her. Jake stood beside her, his presence steady and reassuring. "You heard her," he said calmly. "She has made her choice. You will not take her from here." Margaret glared at both of them but could see the resolve in Clara's eyes. With a final hiss of anger, she turned and stormed away, dragging her daughters behind her. The sound of the cart wheels faded into the distance, leaving a heavy silence on the ranch. Clara exhaled slowly, relief flooding through her. Jake placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "You did it," he said softly. "You stood up for yourself. That takes courage." Clara smiled, a genuine smile that felt strange but wonderful on her face. I didn't know I could," she admitted. Jake nodded. "You are stronger than you think, Clara. You just needed a safe place to realize it." The days that followed were filled with work, but also with moments of joy and healing. Clara learned more about ranch life, her skills improving each day. She could ride the horses confidently, care for the animals, and even help with some of the household chores. Jake encouraged her, but he never pushed too hard, letting her grow at her own pace. Clara found herself laughing again, a sound she had not heard in a long time. She realized that she could be happy even after all she had been through. One morning, as Clara was feeding the chickens, she noticed Jake watching her with a quiet pride. "You're doing amazing," he said, his voice warm. Clara looked at him, her eyes reflecting gratitude. "I never thought I could be good at anything," she admitted. Jake shook his head gently. "You've always had it in you, you just needed the chance to show it." Clara spent more time exploring the ranch, finding small corners where she could sit and think, or just watch the animals. She discovered a hidden grove behind the barn, where wildflowers grew in abundance and a small stream trickled gently. It became her secret place, a sanctuary where she could be alone and dream of a future that felt brighter than the past she had endured. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Clara and Jake sat on the porch, watching the sky turn shades of pink and orange. The warmth of the day lingered, and the gentle breeze carried the scent of hay and earth. Clara felt a peace she had never known before. I think I'm going to be okay," she said softly. Jake nodded, his expression gentle. "You already are, and you're going to be even better. You've got courage, Clara, and you've got heart." The bond between them grew stronger with each passing day. Clara trusted Jake more than anyone she had ever met, and she began to feel a sense of family and belonging that had been missing from her life. Jake, in turn, admired her resilience and the kindness that shone through even after so much hardship. Their connection was quiet but powerful, built on trust, understanding, and the small moments of care they shared. But even in this peaceful time, Clara knew the world outside the ranch was still a threat. Her stepmother's anger had not faded, and she feared Margaret might try again to take control. Yet Clara no longer felt powerless. She had learned that she could stand up for herself, that she could speak her truth and be heard. With Jake by her side, she felt ready to face whatever challenges might come. One night, as Clara lay in her warm bed, listening to the soft sounds of the ranch, she thought about the journey that had brought her here. From the moment she had been cast out, terrified and alone, to the safety and warmth of the ranch, it had been a path filled with fear, courage, and discovery. She realized that the kindness of a stranger could change everything, and that even in the darkest times, hope could still find a way to shine. Clara closed her eyes and whispered into the night, "Thank you for saving me." The words were simple, but they carried the depth of everything she had felt, the fear, the pain, and now the hope. Outside, the wind rustled through the trees, as if carrying her words into the world, and the stars twinkled overhead, bright and constant, a reminder that even after the darkest night, the sun would rise again. And so Clara began to heal slowly but surely under the gentle guidance of Jake. She discovered the strength within herself, the courage to stand up, and the beauty of trust and care. The journey was just beginning, and though the road ahead might hold challenges, she no longer feared the world. She had found someone who believed in her, and that belief was more powerful than any fear she had ever known. The days at the ranch passed quickly, each one bringing Clara new lessons and small victories that made her feel more alive than she had in years. She woke early every morning, greeted by the soft neighing of horses and the lowing of cows. The sunlight streamed through the windows, warming the wooden floors, and the smell of fresh hay filled the air. Clara had grown stronger, both in body and in spirit. She could lift hay bales with ease, saddle horses, and even guide them through the small trails behind the ranch. Each accomplishment, no matter how small, made her feel proud and more confident in herself. Jake watched her with quiet admiration. He didn't need to say much. His eyes alone encouraged her, showing a gentle pride that reminded Clara that she was capable. He would often pause while she worked, letting her figure things out, only stepping in when necessary. His presence was steady, a constant reminder that someone cared deeply about her well-being. Clara began to notice how much she relied on him, not because she was weak, but because his calm, steady support gave her courage to try things she had never imagined she could do. One morning, Clara woke to the smell of fresh bread and eggs. The soft sunlight spilled across her small room as she dressed and hurried downstairs, eager to start the day. She found Jake at the kitchen table, reading a ledger and sipping coffee. When he saw her, he smiled warmly. "Morning, Clara." Sleep well, Clara nodded, smiling back, feeling safe in this simple, peaceful routine. After breakfast, Jake handed Clara a small notebook. "I thought you might like this," he said. "You can write down anything, your thoughts, your plans, even stories. It can help you sort through everything." Clara looked at the notebook, feeling a strange mixture of gratitude and shyness. She had never had a place to express herself like this. Slowly, she opened it and wrote her name on the first page. Just seeing her handwriting made her feel a sense of control she hadn't experienced in a long time. As the day went on, Jake took her to the fields to work. Clara felt a sense of accomplishment as she guided the horses through the pasture, feeding the animals and repairing fences. She was learning so much, and with every task she completed, her confidence grew. For the first time in her life, she felt capable, useful, and valued. The bond between her and Jake deepened, not through words alone, but through shared work, quiet understanding, and mutual respect. During a break, Clara wandered to the edge of the property where a small grove of trees had become her private refuge. She sat on a fallen log, breathing in the fresh air and listening to the soft rustle of leaves. She thought about her past, the cruelty of her stepmother, and the loneliness she had endured. Tears slipped down her cheeks, but this time they felt different. They were not tears of despair, but of release. She allowed herself to grieve without shame, knowing that someone cared enough to let her heal at her own pace. Jake joined her quietly, sitting a few feet away. "It's okay to feel sad sometimes," he said softly. "You've been through a lot, and it's natural to need time to let it out." Clara nodded, wiping her tears and smiling faintly. "Thank you," she whispered. I feel safe here, and that makes it easier to face everything." Jake nodded, his eyes filled with understanding. "That's all I want for you, Clara, to feel safe and to know your worth. You are stronger than you realize." Weeks passed, and Clara's skills on the ranch grew. She could handle almost anything, from caring for sick animals to riding horses across the wide fields. She began to laugh more often, her voice carrying across the property in a sound that was both light and healing. The animals responded to her kindness, and even Jake's quiet admiration seemed to grow as he watched her bloom into a confident young woman. The ranch had become a sanctuary not only for her body but for her heart and soul. One afternoon, as Clara was helping to stack hay, she heard the familiar sound of a cart approaching. Her heart sank as she saw a figure in the distance. It was her stepmother, Margaret, again, with a look of anger and determination on her face. Clara froze, unsure of what to do. Fear surged through her chest, but this time it was accompanied by something new, a quiet courage. She remembered the words she had spoken the first time Margaret had tried to control her. She would not let the fear take over again. Jake noticed her stiffening and stepped closer, his protective presence steadying her. "Stay calm," he whispered. "I've got you," Clara nodded, taking a deep breath as Margaret and her daughters approached the ranch. Margaret's eyes swept over the property with a possessive glare. "There she is," she snapped. "Give her to me now." Clara felt her stomach tighten, but she planted her feet firmly on the ground. "I'm not going back," Clara said, her voice stronger than before. "I have a life here and I choose to stay." Margaret's eyes widened in disbelief and she stepped closer, her voice sharp and threatening. "You will do as I say. You belong to me." Clara's hands trembled, but she didn't back down. Jake moved slightly in front of her, his tone firm. "She belongs here if she chooses. You have no right to take her." Margaret's face twisted in anger, but Clara stood tall, realizing for the first time that her voice mattered. "I am not yours to command," she said. "I can make my own choices. I am not your property." Margaret glared at her, disbelief and fury mingling in her expression. For a moment, it seemed as though the world might erupt into chaos, but Clara felt a quiet inner strength she had never known. She had learned to stand up for herself, and she refused to let fear control her. With a final, angry glance, Margaret turned and left, dragging her daughters with her. The sound of the cart wheels faded into the distance, leaving Clara and Jake standing together in the quiet afternoon. Clara exhaled slowly, relief flooding through her body. "It's over," she whispered. Jake nodded, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. "Not over, but you handled it with courage. You stood your ground, and that is more than many could do." In the days that followed, Clara began to fully embrace her life at the ranch. She learned not only the practical skills of ranch life, but also the lessons of trust, kindness, and resilience. She explored the property, discovering hidden corners and secret spots where she could sit and think, dream, or simply enjoy the peace. The grove by the stream became her favorite place, a sanctuary where she could be alone but never lonely, because she carried the warmth of Jake's care with her. Evenings were often spent on the porch, watching the sun dip behind the distant hills, painting the sky in shades of pink, orange, and gold. Clara and Jake would sit in comfortable silence, sometimes talking, sometimes just enjoying the gentle sounds of the ranch. Clara began to share small stories of her life before, memories of her father, and even the fears she still carried. Jake listened patiently, never judging, always offering gentle guidance. Clara found that each day brought a new sense of independence. She learned to care for the animals on her own, to make decisions about the fields, and even to plan small improvements around the ranch. Her confidence grew with each small achievement, and she began to see herself not as a helpless girl, but as someone capable of shaping her own life. The fear and despair that had haunted her for so long were gradually replaced by determination, hope, and a quiet joy she had never known. One evening, as the stars began to twinkle in the sky, Clara sat on the porch with Jake, her hands wrapped around a warm cup of tea. "I never thought I could feel this way again," she said softly. "Happy, safe, important." Jake smiled, his eyes reflecting the soft glow of lantern light. "You are all of those things, Clara. You just needed the chance to see it for yourself." Clara nodded, a tear slipping down her cheek, but this time it was a tear of gratitude, not sorrow. Their bond deepened with each passing day, built on shared experiences, quiet understanding, and the small acts of kindness that made life at the ranch feel like a true home. Clara no longer felt the constant fear that had defined her past. She had learned to trust, to care, and to believe in herself. The world outside might still hold challenges, but she was no longer afraid. She had strength, courage, and someone who truly believed in her. As the nights grew longer and the days fuller, Clara began to dream of a future that seemed brighter than anything she had imagined. She pictured herself working alongside Jake, caring for the animals, tending the fields, and building a life that was hers to shape. For the first time, she allowed herself to hope for happiness, love, and freedom from the chains of her past. And though the memory of her stepmother's cruelty lingered, it no longer held power over her. Clara had faced fear, stood up for herself, and discovered the strength that had always been inside her. With Jake by her side, guiding and supporting her, she knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, she could face them. She was no longer a girl cast out and alone. She was Clara, strong, capable, and ready to embrace the life she had fought so hard to find. The morning sun rose gently over the ranch, painting the fields with soft light. Clara had already risen, her small bag set aside, though it no longer felt like a burden. She had grown stronger in body and heart, and the ranch now felt like a home. The air was filled with the familiar sounds of horses nickering, cows lowing, and the soft rustle of leaves in the wind. Clara moved with purpose, feeding the animals and checking fences, her confidence visible in every careful motion. The peace she had worked so hard to find had become her daily life, and she cherished every moment of it. Jake was in the barn, tending to a young foal that had been born only a few days ago. Clara watched him for a moment, admiring the quiet strength in his movements. He had not only given her a place to stay, but he had also taught her how to believe in herself. His patience and kindness had transformed her fear into courage, and she knew she owed much of her new confidence to him. Jake looked up from the foal and smiled when he saw her. "Morning, Clara," he said warmly. "Ready for another day?" Clara nodded, smiling. "Yes. I feel ready for anything." But the quiet peace of the morning was soon interrupted by an unsettling sound, the rumble of a cart approaching the ranch. Clara's stomach tightened as she recognized the figure in the distance, her stepmother, Margaret. This time, Margaret's anger seemed stronger, more determined, and her eyes were fixed on Clara with a possessive intensity. She had come back, likely to reclaim control and punish the girl who had dared to defy her. Clara's heart raced, but this time she did not feel paralyzed by fear. She had learned how to face challenges, and she was no longer alone. Jake noticed the tension in Clara's stance and moved slightly in front of her. His presence was steady and protective. "Stay calm," he said quietly. "I'll handle her." Clara nodded, taking a deep breath as Margaret's cart drew closer. Margaret's daughters were with her, looking uncertain and whispering to each other, but Margaret ignored them. "There she is," Margaret shouted, pointing at Clara. "Come with me, you are mine." Clara planted her feet firmly, her hands trembling only slightly. "I am not yours," she said, her voice clear and strong. "I have a life here and I will not go back." Margaret's eyes widened in disbelief. "You dare speak to me this way?" she demanded, stepping closer, her voice sharp and threatening. "You will obey me." Jake stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. "Clara has chosen to stay here. You cannot force her. She has the right to make her own decisions, and you will not take her from this ranch." Margaret's face twisted with rage, but Clara felt a new strength coursing through her veins. She remembered the lessons she had learned over the past weeks: patience, courage, and the value of standing up for herself. "I am not a child," Clara said firmly. "I am not your property. You have no right to decide my life. I will stay here, and there is nothing you can do to change that." Margaret's fury intensified, and for a moment it seemed she might force the issue physically. But she saw the determination in Clara's eyes, and she realized that the girl had changed. Clara was no longer the frightened, helpless girl she had cast out months ago. Jake placed a steadying hand on Clara's shoulder. "You have every right to be here," he said softly. "You are safe, and you will always have a place on this ranch." Margaret glared at him, but she could see the resolve in his stance and the unwavering courage in Clara's eyes. With a final, bitter glare, she turned her cart around and left, her daughters following silently. The sound of wheels fading into the distance left Clara and Jake standing together in the warm morning light. Clara exhaled slowly, relief flooding through her body. She felt tears prick her eyes, but this time they were not tears of fear or sadness. They were tears of triumph and release. "It's finally over," she whispered. Jake nodded, a gentle smile on his face. "Not over," he said, "but you've faced it with courage. You've shown her that you are no longer afraid, and that is more powerful than anything she could have done." Clara smiled through her tears, feeling a sense of freedom she had never imagined. In the following days, Clara settled fully into her new life. The ranch was no longer just a refuge. It had become a place of growth, learning, and hope. She continued to care for the animals, repair fences, and assist with the fields. Each task gave her a sense of purpose and accomplishment. She even began helping Jake with small decisions around the ranch, learning to plan, organize, and take responsibility. The confidence she had gained was no longer fragile. It was strong, rooted in experience, and the knowledge that she had survived and thrived despite her hardships. Evenings were often spent on the porch, watching the sky transform as the sun set behind distant hills. Clara and Jake would sit in comfortable silence, the quiet moments filled with mutual respect and understanding. Sometimes they talked, sharing thoughts about the day, small dreams, or memories from their past. Clara began to speak more openly about her life before, about her father and the kindness he had shown her, and even about the fears she still carried. Jake listened patiently, never judging, offering guidance and comfort through his presence and gentle words. Clara's heart began to heal in ways she hadn't thought possible. She laughed more freely, smiled without hesitation, and even began to form small routines that gave her life structure and joy. She explored the ranch more confidently, discovering hidden corners and secret spots where she could sit quietly or dream about her future. One of her favorite places was the grove near the stream, where wildflowers grew in abundance and the water trickled softly over smooth stones. It became her sanctuary, a place where she could reflect on the past and imagine the life she was building. Jake often joined her there, teaching her more about the land, the animals, and the skills needed to run a ranch successfully. He showed her how to mend fences properly, care for sick animals, and even manage small financial decisions. Clara absorbed everything eagerly, her confidence growing with each lesson. She realized that she was capable not just of surviving but of thriving, shaping her own life with care, effort, and courage. One evening, as the sky turned deep shades of purple and gold, Clara and Jake sat on the porch, their hands wrapped around warm cups of tea. "I never imagined I could feel this way," Clara said softly. "Safe, important, happy." Jake smiled, his eyes reflecting the fading light. "You are all of those things, Clara. You just needed the chance to see it for yourself." Clara nodded, tears brimming in her eyes, but this time they were tears of joy and gratitude. She realized how far she had come, from a frightened, cast-out girl to a young woman standing firmly in her own strength. With each passing day, Clara's bond with Jake deepened, built on trust, shared experiences, and quiet understanding. He had become more than a protector. He was a mentor, a guide, and a friend. Clara felt a sense of belonging she had never known, a feeling that grew stronger as she realized that she had a place where she was valued, safe, and loved. The ranch was no longer just a home. It was a symbol of resilience, courage, and the new life she had earned. Even the animals seemed to respond to Clara's newfound confidence. The horses followed her calmly, the cows approached for feeding without fear, and even the younger animals seemed to sense her gentle strength. Clara felt a deep connection to the life around her, a harmony that reassured her that she had finally found the peace and stability she had been seeking for so long. One morning, Clara looked out across the fields, the sunlight sparkling on the dew-covered grass. She thought about her journey, from the harsh, cruel home of her stepmother to the safety and warmth of the ranch. She realized that every challenge she had faced had shaped her, teaching her courage, resilience, and the importance of standing up for herself. She smiled, feeling a sense of pride and accomplishment that had nothing to do with anyone else's approval. Jake approached, carrying a small basket of food. "Morning, Clara," he said warmly. "Ready for another day?" Clara nodded, smiling. "Yes. And I feel ready for anything now." Jake placed the basket down and looked at her with a gentle pride. "You've come a long way," he said. "I'm proud of you." Clara felt a warmth in her chest, a mixture of gratitude, joy, and a sense of belonging. As the day went on, Clara worked with determination, moving through the tasks she had learned to love. She repaired fences, fed the animals, and even helped Jake with small projects around the ranch. Each accomplishment reinforced her confidence and sense of purpose. She knew that she was building a life that was entirely her own, shaped by her choices, her efforts, and the kindness of those who had helped her along the way. In the evening, Clara sat quietly by the stream in the grove, watching the water flow over smooth stones. The gentle sounds of nature surrounded her, and she felt a deep peace settle in her heart. She thought about the past, about the cruelty she had endured, but she no longer felt fear or sadness. Instead, she felt strength, courage, and hope. She realized that she had not only survived, but had transformed her life into something meaningful and beautiful. Clara whispered softly to herself, "I am safe. I am strong. I have a home." The words were simple, but they carried the weight of her journey, the pain she had overcome, and the new life she had built. She smiled, a genuine smile that reflected the joy and freedom she now felt. The ranch, the animals, and Jake's steady presence had given her a chance to heal, grow, and embrace the future with courage and hope. And so, Clara's story reached a new beginning. She had found safety, love, and a place to belong. She had discovered her strength, her courage, and the power of choice. The girl who had once been cast out by her stepmother was now a young woman with a life full of promise, guided by kindness, hard work, and the belief that she deserved happiness. For the first time, Clara truly felt free.